Click. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Struggling Hunters with myself, Eric Stewart, and Mr. Joe Imes. We're here again with another podcast, episode 11. We're popping them out. We're cranking them out and having fun doing it. And I hope that everybody's enjoying it that's watched our content this far. It's been a lot of fun. With that said, we're going to get right into the podcast and start talking about things. First of all, Joe, you sent me a picture this weekend.
I did.
It looks like you got something kind of nice in that picture. Do you want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah. So so it was a picture of a deer, and not just a deer, or it was a buck. So this weekend I went down to some family property. I got permission to set up a trail camera and then to hunt. So I went down to set up my trail camera this weekend. That was a good thing and a bad thing. So the good thing is that I guess there's kind of well anyway. So the good thing was I came across a herd of bucks, and there was probably I think there was 7 bucks in this herd. So that was awesome. But the bad thing about that was it was on the neighbor's property, so I got to gain permission to hunt that property. Hopefully I can get it, but if not, I'll move on. And so that was a bad thing of that. And then setting up my trail camera, I went down, set up my trail camera, got this little cheap one, and I wasn't too worried about setting it up, put it up, and I went back to check on it before I left, and then noticed that like my battery power was down to 70%. And I put fresh, brand new Energizer batteries. And so, I was like, well, it's got the Energizer bunny in it. They should last a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I left it, and then I went back home, went back up to the house, and was sitting there thinking about it. And I was like, man, if I've only had it up for like 4 or 5 hours, and I'm only down to 7, and I'm down to 70%, like, man, that's my battery's not going to last that long. So I went back down again, picked it up, and this time I think it was down to 60-something%. And so I don't know if I have something off or not, but there was only three pictures that were taken that were actually, recorded. So it's odd that it drops that quick. So I'm still playing. So I brought it home, long story short, brought it home. I'm playing with it now, trying to get it figured out. Set it up in the living room, captured like 125 images, and it went down to like 40%. So I don't know.
So is that you just walking back and forth?
Right. Yeah.
Are you looking up there like a deer in the headlights?
Yeah, just pop and pose every once in a while, just ka-chow.
Yeah, I like it. So are those the same batteries?
They are the same batteries.
And you've gotten 100 and what'd you say,
125.
What's your battery life now?
It was down to 40%.
That's still pretty dang quick though.
That's what I was thinking. And like I got another one that like I can leave it out for, a month or 2 months, and it gets down to 60 or, like 40% after that long. So I don't know. It might be one of those things that, sometimes you do got to spend money on the little bit more expensive stuff, but
you got a really good deal on that, didn't you?
Yeah, I think I paid like $20 for it. It was like some little flash sale. It was like originally $120 on sale now for $20 or something. I was like, oh yeah, I'll get it.
That's one of those things that you just can't pass up. I mean,
right.
You live and you learn, but I mean, yeah, if somebody was going to sell me a trail camera for $20, I'd probably have a hard time saying no also.
You're kind of like, oh, it's $20. It probably should work somewhat, but I'm still going to play with it.
Isn't that funny whenever when you buy something for $20 and you're like, well, if it doesn't work, whatever. But then if it doesn't work, then you're pretty mad.
Right. Yeah. I spent I spent cold hard cash I worked hard for.
Yeah, yeah.
But so I mean that was good though. You know, got out, doing some scouting. Went down went up the mountain trying to find one spot that I hunted 7 years ago.
Mm.
And not that I got lost, but the whole time I had Jen with me and we're driving up, and it's like I feel like I should be going facing more south, and we kept heading north along this mountain line, and I'm like, it feels so wrong, it's not right. And I was like, and then we get up and then we crest the top of the mountain, we start heading down the other side, and it's like, this is not right. I should be up on top, I should be plateaued, I should, be able to see all around me. There's no trees. So we stopped and had some lunch and turned around and went back down the road, and there was a right-hand turn heading up the mountain that I was supposed to make that I didn't make. And usually I remember that stuff, but this time I forgot that I made this right-hand turn.
Wow.
And it was like clear back at the bottom of the trail too. But
just passed that by, huh?
Yeah, just zipped right by. I think I looked at it, I was like, oh, there's a trail right there, and I just kept going.
And isn't that funny though? I mean, you hadn't been up there in 7 years, but you knew that you were still that intuition of,
yeah,
this ain't right. This ain't. Yeah, it's funny how that works.
But I was like, I knew enough of it because I was like, yeah, I'm heading the wrong direction. But I was like, I think I am, but I'm still heading up. Like I still feel familiar about it all, but I'm not sure until I got to the top and started heading down the other side. And I was like, this is wrong.
Yeah. That's funny.
But so it was fun, got go hang out with my dad.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's cool. So yeah, I didn't know that you got to hang out with your dad.
Yeah. He lives down in that area. So stopped in, saw him, and it was nice little visit.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. I haven't really been doing a whole lot. Just kind of hanging around the house. I got a few days off of work for, because of having the baby girl. So, been kind of doing some honeydews around the house and, take care of the kiddo or the other kids too. It's crazy having 3 kids in the house. But, yeah, so just kind of been playing dad. Haven't really had a chance to get out, but I am hoping I can here in the next few weeks. I feel like I've said that on the last few podcasts, but seriously though, in the next few weeks, get out and do a little scouting or something. And I don't have a trail camera on me as of right now, but I'm thinking about buying me one here pretty soon. So probably get one of those and then put one up on the off the beaten path, and hopefully I have a little better luck and my percentages stay up. But you know what? Actually, anybody listening to this that has trail cams, shout out some of your favorite brands that you use for a trail cam.
Or maybe even something that you like about a trail camera or something you don't like about a trail camera. Like, Eric said he doesn't have any. I have 2. My one's a multi-tree or so, I can't remember. But like I said, my other one, which was, a little bit more expensive, or at least it was 8 years ago. And my other one is a cheap one. I can't remember the brand, but having issues with it. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what some of your guys' likes and dislikes are about what you got.
Yeah, I'd like to know too, because I know for me the only reason that I don't have a trail camera is I've always kind of been a little hesitant about buying one just because I public land hunt and I don't want somebody to steal my trail camera. So I've been a little hesitant about it, but Joe kind of inspired me to actually get one, mostly just we kind of talked about it and just getting off the beaten path. Um, you know, probably more than likely it'd be safer than not. As long as I try to hide it. I don't know. You want to hide it to an extent. You want to hide it like where nobody can see it, but then you also want to put it somewhere where there's going to be a lot of animals walking through. So
Right.
you can't hide it too good, right? Because you might
Right.
not see nothing. But then, so I don't know. But yeah, I have trust issues, so that's pretty much why I've never really bought one. But you Joe kind of talked me into or inspired me to want to get one. So I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks about trail cameras. And then so yeah, that's pretty much where we're at. Hopefully in a few weeks I get to put a trail camera up and go from there. Maybe I'll take advice from one of the listeners that on what they use. I'll buy what they use. I'll let you know if I do. Um, but with that, also, I do have one other question that I'd like to reach out to the fans. Is what kind of speaking of deer? It kind of made me think of this. Speaking of deer, and Joe getting picture of that nice buck. Uh, what do people like to hunt more, mule deer or whitetail? I know some people probably only have the option of one or the other, but why would you? What do you hunt and why do you hunt them? Be kind of interesting to hear that also. And to reach out to us, find us on Facebook. If you look in the uh, description of our podcast, it should have a link to our Facebook page. Go there and comment on our Facebook. And then obviously if you're watching this on YouTube, just comment on YouTube on what you like. We're just trying to get our engagement up a little more. We'd like to see a little more engagement. So that's why we're kind of asking a few questions. With that said, though, Joe, I have a question for you.
Okay.
uh, how do you feel about taking off your shoes in an archery hunt? Or have you ever done it?
I have not ever done it. Uh, won't lie. It's been something that's been on my mind since I've been going down this archery hunting road. Um, it's we'll say it's a little scary, a little bit, but I get why they do it. So, last year I was hunting elk, and I know I don't see too many people taking their shoes off when they're hunting elk. Doing that. I mean, I'm sure there's situations that call for it, but one of the things too is I hear that elk is a little bit forgiving about breaking twigs in the woods because they're a larger animal, so they're gonna naturally make a little bit more noise. So taking your shoes off when you're getting close to an elk, is a little different to, you're calling them into you, so it's not like you're really sneaking up. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a situation that calls for it. So this is my first year pursuing a deer with a bow, and I see a lot more people taking YouTube videos, taking their shoes off or their boots off, and putting on some thick socks to sneak up on the deer. And I guess that's one of the things that you can do that's gonna maybe increase your odds. I think a couple of things kind of go in the factor there, I believe. This is just, my take on it, not that I've done it. So one, it's going to cause you to slow down. So if you're taking your shoes off, you're probably, 80 yards or under. And so you need to be, from what I've been picking up, hopefully I get to put into practice this year. You're going to want to slow down and you're going to want to be quieter. So I guess, taking your shoes off, you're naturally going to go slower because, my feet aren't calloused up and I ain't going to be running across the field barefooted. So
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go slower for that reason, and then, watching where you're stepping. And then wearing a thicker, if you have an opportunity to put a thicker sock on, like if you step on twigs or something, that padding will absorb the sound, or maybe not such a hard crunch if you step on a twig or something. So I see the benefit of it. I haven't done it. Will I do it? I probably will, because I feel like it'll help increase my odds if I'm in the situation for sneaking up on a bedded buck, or or something, like, yeah, I'll probably do it, but I'm a little scared. I don't want a twig in my foot.
Yeah.
Or a
Yeah.
splinter. But
So the videos that you've seen, do they just use thicker socks? Is that what
some of
they're?
them do. Some of them actually carry a pair of thicker socks in their pack. And so one of the things about me is I hate dirty shoes, like insoles. I hate, putting dirty socks on and then putting them in my boots. Like that just
Mm,
bugs the heck out of me. So if I do it, I'm hopefully going to be prepared enough to have an extra set of socks in my pack, and I'm sure, like I could hopefully be able to set down, switch out my boots for my socks, and then be able to take off, because I don't like dirty insoles.
yeah.
Gotta be clean.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But yeah, so they'll carry an extra set of socks, and sometimes they've forgotten them, so they're in there just whatever socks they have on. So
I guess if you
and
do, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, I do have a pair of socks that are thicker that I will be have in my pack. Hopefully, if like I said, if I remember them, that they will be included in my hunting pack. I will have a thicker pair of socks.
Yeah, that might be a business idea right there. If you make that popular in the archery world, you could make like a pair of socks with some leather bottoms or something,
Right,
for
Bigfoot feet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I wonder if somebody's already tried to make it, but it's one of those things that's so unheard of. I don't know how good the business plan is, but
Right. Well, I haven't seen anything recently, but some of the old, not, I shouldn't say old, but like, mid 2000s, um, there's this kind of this boot sock thing you can pillow that you put over your boots, and it has some type of a fuzzy bottom to it, so that, like that way you're not taking your boots off, but you're throwing on this extra boot, I guess, that supposedly does the same thing as walking barefooted because it's padded. And so, but I mean, then that's a couple pounds heavier and something you'd have to pack.
so that's the biggest. Is that the biggest takeaway with going barefoot, is that it just helps deaden the sound whenever if you step on like a little twig and
Yeah, that's kind of what I've taken away, is it just helps with this, without your heavy soled boot, um, stepping down on something or kicking something, like, or scraping, or making the boot noises as you're trying to sneak up. It's less sound that you'll be admitting, and it'll kind of help, I think, deaden the sound of what you're stepping on.
yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I like the idea, or I like the thought of it. Um, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
like it's different, but I like the thought of it.
right. And not, like I guess in a way I kind of hope I get the opportunity, because I mean that's kind of the epitome of bow hunting, because like if you're trying to get from the 80 yards down to maybe 40 yards, and then maybe even down to the 5 yards or 10 yards, like I I think that's one kind of the appeal to some people. And like I haven't been that close to a deer in a while. Like I have, but like not in a hunting situation
Yeah,
where I didn't know I was there. So I want the experience. I hope I get the experience.
yeah,
But
it sounds cool. I hope I hope I can be there to film it.
I hope so too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Maybe I'll come up with Joe socks.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. The Joe soul. The
Yeah.
Joe. Yeah, something like that. We'll play with the wording, but it could be $100 business idea.
Yeah. I'll at least have sold one pair to me.
Yeah, yeah. It's not a bad idea, really.
It's true.
Make an entire business just to support yourself, or just to build everything for yourself.
Right.
Makes sense. Makes sense if you don't think about it, as they say.
True. Oh. But
Well,
um,
um,
go ahead. I just was welling with you.
well, I'm glad we can well. It feel it feels so well when we well. This might be one of those late night podcast deals where it's at least funny to us.
Right.
uh so our so we were going to we have a plan to kind of go into elk, their habitats, uh what they like and what they like to eat, uh where they bed, uh just kind of a bunch of little things that we looked up throughout the week, Joe and I, and we're going to try to get through those um in this segment. And hopefully the idea is kind of maybe, some of you guys probably heard it a million times and some of you guys probably haven't heard it ever, or maybe a nice little reminder, but the idea is just kind of understand elk a little bit better. So Joe, do you want to start that off with anything?
Yeah. So I'll I'll get going on that. So one of the things that everyone I think knows, at least I know, but it's like one of those things too that of trying to get on the forefront of your mind because I mean, for me when I'm out hunting elk or deer, like I go up to a field or a mountainside and I just go, oh look, there's grass, there's shrubs, there's everything, and I don't really ever pay attention to where all that's growing because like this is just a moment that I had in my life recently that I realized that I didn't pay attention to. Because like I said, a cow, like a bovine, they feed in a field where they have food, and so for me, like a mountainside or a meadow, like that's kind of the elk and the deer's field they get to eat in. So I've never really like tried to get more of an understanding than that. And so one of the things that I've picked up on is that where elk are a grazer, they're gonna eat and move at the same time. Like they're just not gonna. Well, I'm sure they do, but more than likely they're gonna be walking and eating and not just staying within one little square in their life. Like they're gonna move around. And so a couple the things is they're going to eat they're going to eat a grass. So when you're hunting, I think we talked about it last time, about precipitation, how much rain you've had, trying to pay attention to that, and that's going to affect where those where certain things are going to be growing during the year, where they're or be drying out and not growing, and paying attention to the type, how big like the grasses are in the area, because as the grass grows taller and taller, it gets bitter and bitter, so it's not as sweet.
Mm, that's something I didn't know, actually.
Yeah, so like if you're in an area and you have a bunch of like brown grass that's knocked over, and sometimes there's some uh green grass under it, but like it's not going to be the best feeding area for an elk. So and like so I found through my studies that like there's three different types of foliage that they're going to eat. So it's going to be grasses, a forb, which I had to look up. And a forb is a flowering plant, like a plant that has flowers,
Mm.
you know, and then a woody plant. So a plant that uh, kind of like the oaks, the scrub oaks, sagebrush. And one thing, you know, and you got to pay attention to what I picked up on is you got to pay attention to the little buds, like how fresh, how were the like what plant, what in the woods, in the woody plants, you know, so scrub oak, sagebrush, your junipers, uh, willows, I think was one of them, and they're always going to have like new growth on them, and so some of well not I shouldn't say always, but you want to pay attention to what areas have you know that new growth, and some and the shorter ones are going to be sweeter than the taller ones, so that's something to pay attention to. And let's see, yeah, like the that's kind of what I got. I get, for at least what the elk eat, what I picked up on for this last week, what I'm going to try to clue into for this next year.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't want to leave that yet because there's a couple things that you said. So I didn't know that the longer grass was more bitter. So, because sometimes I mean, you're hunting somewhere and you're like, man, the grass is nice and tall here. Why? I mean, all the food in the world. Why ain't they eating it? But that makes sense that it's sweeter, and so it's something to look at. I feel like through the years of hunting, trying to pick up all the little signs. Everybody like tries to find tracks and scat, but it's all these other little signs that you got to look for, and it gets overwhelming. I mean, half the time I forget. I forget to check my wind,
Right.
and I mean, I feel like at the end, like all the little things that you have to remember to try to help yourself be more successful, like you almost get yourself turned around and just go back to base camp if you actually like went by every little thing that you had to
Right.
go by, because it gets overwhelming sometimes. I mean, but it is something that, with that said though, it is something that the reason we're talking about it is obviously because we hope that you guys kind of pick up some of this stuff, and next hunting season will use what we're saying, because that's what we're doing, is we're going to use what we're saying. I mean, while you're saying that, I'm thinking, oh, okay, I got to look for like more shorter grass, and like that's
And
where
by
they're going to
shorter
stay.
too, like like one of the things that was like between 2 to 4 inches, like, and green, like because once it starts, like what I picked up on, once it starts getting bigger than that, and then it's not quite as lush.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's something I didn't know. The on the contrary of that though is in the later fall into winter, because I did a little bit of my research, and they'll eat grasses, shrubs, bark and tree branches. I thought that was kind of crazy. It kind of almost contradicts what you're saying, but I think it's more in the winter time, right? Like whenever the food
Right.
is scarce and they're just trying to eat whatever they can. So, I guess bark has some kind of nutrition in it. I didn't look into much more than that, but I just thought that was interesting. Whenever I saw that, I was like, huh, really? Bark? Really? I didn't know it. I don't know of anything besides a woodpecker that goes through bark.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
guess pine beetles too, I guess, but
Yeah. Well,
I
we're not.
wasn't expecting elk. So, but
um.
yeah, that's pretty interesting as far as the food goes.
Yeah. So like so I'll throw out there too. One of the things I thought was kind of interesting was paying attention to like avalanche chutes. Like if you know where, I mean, it's not like I guess you can probably, there's a website out there that lets you know where avalanches have happened. or, like, but if out in the backwoods and you can tell where, like an avalanche shoot, I'm sure that my inexperience not is, I can't say that I've noticed them, but I'm sure there's reoccurring spots that where avalanche happens. And so where I'm getting at, hopefully I haven't lost anybody, is so it's gonna, so in the wintertime it snows, snow builds up, and whatever the physics are for an avalanche, weak bottom. So that, to me, in my head, I see it as the snow is grabbing a hold of whatever's growing on these mountain sides, and they're frozen to it, and then an avalanche happens and rips out all that shrubs, all that grasses, whatever it was frozen to. Well, in the spring, that's going to allow fresh growth.
Mm.
And so that's kind of, I feel like, is a key to all this too, is paying attention to where the fresh growth is happening, because that's going to be a better tasting, more nutritious food plot than other places.
Yeah, it makes sense. To kind of spin off of that too is forest fires. After a couple years after forest fire, the next spring,
Right.
to pay attention to those areas, because it's supposed to carry a lot of vegetation as everything starts growing back after the fires.
Right.
So kind of the same thing as what you said, but just with fires instead of avalanches.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's like one of the things, as we're talking about leaving your hunting camp and going out in the woods and trying to keep all this straight, I think that's just little things that you kind of learn to keep in your back pocket as you're looking east, as you're, I guess, east scouting, trying to figure out, where fires have been, and then also where avalanche can happen. So then you find, look for a sanctuary that'd be close by. But it's all interesting. I should say it, like I probably hear me say it a whole bunch of times tonight, but I realize this stuff, but I don't know that I've ever really like internalized it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, doing this podcast kind of helps us internalize it better, because we're wanting to come up with content, learn more about what we're trying to do ourselves with elk hunting, and trying to create content and doing some research. It's kind of like, oh wow, I mean, some of this stuff, it's like, oh yeah, I knew that, but I never really thought about it after. I've gained the knowledge at some point in my life, but never really thought twice about it after that. But then you read something that says, oh, this is really important to know, and you're like, oh, okay. But just help internalize all the information of vegetation, and I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. If you can figure out where they're eating, you're gonna figure out how to get one. I mean, you're gonna come across one, eventually. So
Yeah.
So I think vegetation is a real important role, but it's kind of funny that it's something that, like, for me, that's probably one thing that I've lacked on is maybe studying those areas in a deeper way, to try to get one up, trying to get to where the elk are. Is I haven't really studied the vegetation idea of it.
Right. And like I said, in the very beginning, like when I looked at a hillside or something, or whatever was in front of me where I was hunting, I assumed like all of it was where they would eat. Like there's grass there, should be an elk. There could be, instead of like focusing on like places where the food would be better.
Yeah. Yeah, that I mean, that makes a ton of sense. So there must be more nutrient in the nutrients in the Forda. I mean, there's probably a bitter taste in the taller grass, but it probably loses its nutrients as it gets taller too, right? Or
Well, I think yeah, I guess I think there's just more of it in a smaller area. Like, that 2 to 4 inch leaf or whatever stem is going to have more an easier digestive nutrients than it's going to be in a stick, and it's going to be soft too. More enjoyable to eat. What you enjoy, a burnt steak that's crisp, or one that's a little bit more rare and juicy.
Depends on how long it's been since I had a steak.
Okay.
Well, the reason I brought nutrients into it though is because a part that I researched to kind of add to is they said that they eat grass obviously for more nutrients to survive the winter, and then you broke it down to the 2 to 4 inches, so it started making me think, oh, well, maybe the 2 to 4 inch grass. I mean, it's sweeter and everything, but it actually might carry more nutrients in the shorter, greener grass than the taller, drier grass.
Right.
And it probably tastes more bitter too, but I don't know. If I ate grass every day, I mean, I don't know if it'd be much of a difference between dry grass and green grass at some point.
The other thing too, it'd probably cut the mouth up a little bit more on the more stemmy, thicker, older grass. It's not quite as soft too. So
yeah, but horses do it all the time.
That's true. That's true.
But who knows? Maybe elk are a little more picky, I guess.
They get to be, huh?
Yeah. They've earned it.
Video.
Did you hear that?
I heard some video.
So my phone, I got a Google. Can't say it too loud. A Google phone, and we said something that like triggered it, and it started like answering questions we were talking about.
That's awesome.
Oh,
I love it.
But so I was gonna say, I wanted to, I guess, share a little bit of my childhood with us here on this podcast. So, and then I was going to share a little bit more information that came out of this book too about, I guess, rutting elk. I didn't really know about. So anyway, so this book, I got this book when I was so it's not just, well, I got one book. It's all about elk. I got another book that's about mule deer. And then I can't remember the other. So I got this whole set of books that my dad bought me at a yard sale when I was probably 9.
Nice.
And I've held on to it like all these years. I read through them once or twice, but I had nothing's really stuck till now when we're discussing it. So I went and pulled out the book about elk, and it's actually, so it's a leather-bound book. It's red, with gold lettering, and it's it was put out by the North American Hunting Club, and so it's a nice little set. I've enjoyed it over the years. I feel like it's, so let's see, it was published, let's see, I should have had that more ready. So the copyright was in 1987. So that's kind of interesting. But yet, like, it's still full of information. I'm sure some information doesn't change, but I wanted to share this part of it. So it talks, I didn't realize it till I was reading this. So it's, so here's a little bit more about elk. So, quote, I guess I'm supposed to do quote. Elk are adaptable feeders and can digest grasses, forbs, woody plants, and minimal accumulations. They definitely prefer grasses and forbs, which may contain 85% of their diet until late fall and early spring. So now let's jump down to, I guess, into the rut a little bit more. So
I got one question because I don't think you said it. What's the book called?
It's called All About Elk.
All About Elk? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe you did say it, but I just thought you were saying it's a book all about elk or something. I didn't realize that you said the actual title. Sorry to disrupt, but just for the listeners and stuff, so they kind of know what to look for if they want to look for the book themselves.
So it says that, so this is what I found interesting. An elk an elk liver is capable of some pretty strange things. It stores vitamins, vitamin A, all right, and produces glycogen, just like livers everywhere. But during early rut, the bull's liver accepts a lot of lipids, fats, and sterols from other parts of the body. These accumulated, raising the fat content of the liver to almost 50%. That's which I thought was interesting, that the liver fat content grows to 50%. So
Yeah.
then the fat changes the liver color from a deep red to a yellow or pink. And so then it goes on to say that in this way, a bull has a ready supply of easy metabolized fat and can undergo prolonged fasting during the rut. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Like I've never hunted an elk during the rut, but like, I guess when you have one thing on your mind, you're not focused on eating, a square meal, making sure you're taking your vitamin pills, eating those luscious little green grasses
Yeah.
or buds on trees, right? You're focused uh, on making sure your herd grows bigger, and
Scoring big, and I'm not talking about Boone and Crockett.
right,
That
and
was stupid, but
so they're not eating. So that the liver provides them a way to fast and be able to have the fat content. I'm not entirely sure what it needed, but as I thought that was just something to kind of put in your back pocket as you're hunting too during the rut. Like, oh, elk aren't going to really eat all that much. They have their body naturally gives them the ability to continue
to fast, to prolong fast.
yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that either. I mean, I kind of see that's one of those things that kind of it makes total sense whenever you say it, because they're just running around, their eyes all bugged out and ready to find a female, and
Right.
anybody that wants to fight them, they're down. They're down. They're like a 21-year-old first time going to the bar and getting drunk. They're either
Right.
wanting to fight everybody in the crowd, or go home with a lady. Either
Right.
one's fine with them. So
Very true. But they don't have the fat content stored up in their liver to continue that on day after day.
Yeah, but they got the liquid courage.
True.
They got something else in their liver.
True. But anyways, yeah. I thought that was interesting.
No, that is pretty interesting. So I don't know if the book says it or if you thought about it, but one question that I kind of am curious about is, even though that they're capable of doing that in prolonged fast, like once the rut's over, are they is that their main concern at that point, is trying to also make up for lost calories and
So I'm sure the book talks about it. I didn't get into post rut information, but just this is information I've gathered from talking to other people. It's nothing that I've personally experienced, but I sound like a pro. Here I'm full of information, but so post rut, yeah, they're no longer focused on one thing. They no longer have one thing on their mind. Well, they no longer have one topic on their mind. It changes to another thing because now they got to fatten up. Because I think I heard like they can lose up to 30 or 40 pounds. I think it was during don't quote me on that, during the rut from the prolonged fasting. But so now they're trying to put the weight back on, and so that's, I think, one of the things so that's something you put in your back pocket, is that they're trying to put the weight back on. So what's that going to mean? They're going to be go ahead.
They're going to be focused on eating and be at places where there's vegetation.
Right. Is that what I think, is that something you were wanting to cover?
Yeah. No, that was pretty much my question was, I mean, would you be more than likely? So like, because I'm thinking about, selfishly thinking about my situation up where I hunt. And I'm like, okay, so maybe, I'm doing second season, so it's later October, or sometimes third season. Um, but I'm doing October, early November. And, you know, maybe I need to focus on where they might be vegetating. Obviously, that's what I need to focus on, but kind of the knowledge that we've talked about today has made me think about changing the way I've hunted out there in that area in the past. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And like I said, that's something you be putting in your back pocket is trying to realize they're just coming off the rut. Now they got to get fat because they got to get through the winter. They got to put all that fat back on, which is kind of interesting if you think about it. Mother Nature is pretty interesting. It does a lot of amazing things. And one of the things, you take a second step back and look, deer, elk, they all go into rut just before winter. I mean, it's not like 1 month it's rut and then 2 days later it's a hard winter. Like they do get time. Well, some years they get time to put the fat back on, but like it's interesting how Mother Nature works. Like, they're trying to build their fat up to be able to survive the winter, but then they, when their babies drop in the spring, now their babies have a chance to go through all the spring and summer and fall to get healthy enough to make it through the winter. you
Yeah.
know it's just one of those things you stop and think like, man, Mother Nature is kind of cruel to make these animals go through this cycle just before winter hits, and then says, hey, by the way, you got to put 40 pounds back on before winter hits to make sure you get it through.
Yeah. Yeah. That is kind of true, huh?
Yeah. But then if it was reversed and the rut was earlier in the spring, now you're having babies born just before the winter. And I don't think, there's no way a baby's going to be able to get fat enough in a month or two to be able to survive a winter.
So that kind of one of the other things that I looked up on my end is it said that 900 or elk can get up to 900 pounds, but I kind of feel like that's probably pretty common during the hunting season of an elk being up 900 pounds. Maybe because the reason I say that is because even if a bigger elk after the rut, I mean, maybe like if you got an elk right in the rut, during archery season, um, I mean, you might be able to get one that's 900 pounds, but by October, by the time rut's over and they're moving on with life, they're trying to get their weight back up, but it might be kind of very rare to see an elk at 900 pounds during hunting season. You picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah. So you're saying that the amount of weight an elk loses during the rut is going to have them under 1,000 or under 900 pounds during the actual rifle hunt when they're trying to put weight back on.
Yeah, yeah. So like in spring and summer, probably like middle of summer, right before the rut, probably is where they have the most weight, right? Because they're getting
Right.
ready. They're getting ready to perform. So they probably have the most weight at that point, and then it's all kind of downhill from there, if you will. I mean, even though they're trying to put on back on the weight after the rut's over, it's hard to say if they actually do get it all back by the time rifle season comes around.
Well, then the other thing too you think about is not every year, but some years there's a winter will hit early. So, it gets cold, and once it starts getting cold and freezing, then all the good grasses or whatever they're eating, they're going to die off. That's going to have the quick, starches and whatnot is going to die off sooner. Than you're left with this dry, dead vegetation that doesn't. I mean, it has some nutrients. That was the one thing that I thought was kind of interesting. So, elk chew their cud. So they have different I can't remember. I don't remember how many different stomachs they have. But they'll set and they'll regurgitate and then chew what they've already eaten, and then swallow it again. And so as they're doing that, they're pulling out more nutrients, more minerals. So that whether it's one of the things I read said that because the elk chew their cud and have a bigger stomach, that the elk can get away with eating like like the brown grasses, that like the dead grasses in the wintertime. They eat more of it, like 20 pounds a day, and they're able to get the nutrients because they chew their cud to get through the winter, where a deer can't eat that amount of that dead brown vegetation to get through the winter. They got to do it a different route.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So in October and November, do you think you might be able to spot them eating more brown grass?
Depends.
More dead grass?
It depends on, I mean, you might be able to because they can, but it also depends on, I'm sure, like the precipitation or how cold it has been, because once things freeze, then it starts killing it. So
that's why typically you always hear of them migrating down into the lower
right
parts of the woods.
Yeah.
I'd like to know when they actually start migrating, though. It'd be nice.
Well, that's one thing. I don't know if there's an actual, it's not like, November 10th, we're rounding everybody up and we're heading down to the lower country. I've heard stories, guys telling stories where they'd be up in the high country and there's like 3 feet of snow, 2.5, 3 feet of snow, and there's like 3 big old bull elk running through it. Like, so I don't know if there's necessarily a date. I think it's just one of those things where, for like, you think about in your situation, like, if food's starting to get scarce, are you going to try to get it to where it's easier, or are you going to stick it out where food is harder to get to? And so that's whenever you're done putting it up with it's hard to get to, then you're going to move on to the easier part. So whenever that tolerance is, I'm sure, is kind of like for elk too.
Yeah, I've speaking of that, I've kind of wondered that same thing because, I've heard that they start moving down lower, but then I hear people doing high backcountry hunts, and I'm like, well, shouldn't they be moving down? Like at this point, like, would you be? But then I've heard people or had friends that have gotten their elk from doing it. So I'm like, well, that theory is kind of out the window about migrating to lower elevations.
Right. And I think that's typically, I shouldn't, say anything because it's not like I have personal experience in that topic personally witnessing that, but it seems like when it's that situation, it's like a lone bull or a lone, like it's only 3 or 4 bulls, or one of the things, at least for mule deer, is the big boys are, from what I've heard, are typically the last ones to come down from the mountains. Like, they'll wait till there's like a foot of, I'm probably exaggerating a little bit, but they'll wait till a foot of snow, and then they're like, all right, I'm tired of this, I'm going down.
That makes sense.
But it's interesting. I've never experienced that for myself, and I'm hopefully someday we'll be able to.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, we will. We'll do it this year. I have a couple things that I thought was kind of cool through my research. At one time before, basically, before the pilgrims came to the American continent, there was estimated around 10 million elk in America, or in the northern American continent, and there was 10 million elk that roamed, and then by the 1900s there was only 41,000 left at that point. And through the help of conservation with the what we talked about last week with Boone and Crockett efforts, and other organizations similar to that. 41 or there was only 41,000 in 1900s, and then but today in today's time there's over 1 million back. I can't imagine what that looked like with 10 million elk though. You know,
It,
it's amazing that thought, because there's so many elk. I mean, Colorado's like number 1 with elk. I think Utah's up there in the numbers, number 2 or number 3 or something.
I think
Number 3. Who's number 2 then? I
New Mexico, I believe.
New Mexico.
Yeah.
But I mean, I see elk quite a bit, and I just can't imagine if 10 million running around.
Right. That'd just be nuts. I mean, it's kind of wish you had a time machine to be able to go back and see all this stuff in its like flourishing states, you know.
Oh man,
That'd be kind of fun. But
I know we need to get us a what is it? Is it a DeLorean, the Back to the Future car?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to buy one of those, start working on it. And then but through that, let's see, another thing about the elk research that I did is uh through the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Elk have been restored after 100 years of no elk in these areas at all. Elk have been restored in North Carolina, Kentucky, Missouri, Tennessee, Virginia, Wisconsin, and Ontario, Canada. I just thought that was really cool. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation has been around since 1984. They founded it out of Montana, but they've done work for elk, trying to bring back the elk herds all over the United States and obviously Canada. I just thought that was kind of cool that they're bringing elk back into those areas that haven't seen elk in over 100 years. So
True.
and I don't have a lot of information on this, but I guess elk are starting to migrate down to Texas also.
Huh.
And I'm trying. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, if you know the answer to this, but they are like a they're a non-invasive species that's a invasive species now, because they used to be in Texas, but then they were not in Texas for so long, and then they've slowly been migrating into Texas that they're changing the habitat. And so it's kind of like this weird, so they're kind of like protected, but they're kind of not. It's a really weird I'm trying to think. I feel like the Meat Eater guys have covered it a little bit on one of their podcasts, and it was quite a while ago. That's why I can't really remember. But I thought it was really interesting that they elk were originally were in Texas, but they haven't been there in so long that they're kind of calling them an invasive species now. But they were
one time a natural a part of the topography and everything, and now they've been gone for so long that they're tearing everything up and kind of ruining the ecosystem, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah. I just thought that was kind of interesting about Texas, but obviously when I had it, I'm sure I could have found it if I would have looked it up, but they didn't. I didn't have time to look up everything. But they didn't mention Texas having elk there, but I heard that a long time ago, and I'm just kind of piecing it together on the podcast now about what I remember about it. But I thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, that is kind of interesting. I haven't heard that yet. Makes me want to do some research.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm not wrong. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong about that. I remember listening to another hunting podcast about it, and thought it was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So, let me see if there's anything else that
One of the things though, that as you're looking at, I thought it was interesting is, so elk. So I know people know this, but it's still fascinating. Elk, or not everyone does. Elk will lose their antlers in the winter time, into winter, drop their antlers, and then they grow them back. And they're typically, I think it's from mid-April till so hunting seasons in August, or for the bow. And usually, they're not fully grown by then, but their growth rate is so quick that they're considered like the fastest bone growth in the animal kingdom.
I've heard that same thing before. It's so crazy that how that works.
Yeah, sometimes growing up to like an inch a day.
That's crazy. Wow. Yeah. Um. So something that would probably help in your archery. I mean, I'm still trying to figure out the rifle hunts, so I'm obviously pretty oblivious whenever it comes to archery hunts at this point. Um. But one thing that I read was the elk like to splash in ponds to like stay cool.
Oh
And
yeah,
the reason I bring that up is because it's still pretty warm during archery season for the most part. So that might be like an advantage to try to figure out where they're at is somewhere around some ponds or
right,
around water somewhere, because they might be going there to cool off at
right,
some point.
true. You tuck that away in the back pocket.
Yeah, that's just another one to
Bag of
try to
tricks.
remember. What was that?
Put that in your bag of tricks.
Yeah, yeah. Another one to try to remember while you're out there getting frustrated that you haven't seen nothing for 2 days.
Right.
um, I don't know. I feel like that kind of closes up the segment for me, unless you got something else.
No, I think that covers everything that I was ready to cover.
Well, it's been fun. I mean, we've been Joe and I've been kind of enjoying doing a little bit of research on some of these topics, and hopefully we're you know doing the research and you guys are enjoying listening to it, and hopefully we're making enough sense about it that you guys are like, okay, yeah, I get it, But um, I don't know. We're kind of, it's just a little something new. I mean, there's only so many hunting stories that we could say in podcasts. So, we've been kind of trying to uh, think of topics to come up with content. And so, the last couple, we've kind of done some research and I don't know. I feel like they've been working out pretty well. Um, it's kind of nice to know that stuff for myself. So I imagine other people would like to learn a little bit about that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah, for sure.
uh, yeah, it's been a good, I feel like I've learned a lot about elk in the last few weeks, or a lot more than I did before. So it's been pretty nice. And, is there anything else you, want to say, Joe?
Just thanks for listening. Hopefully you're okay with us rambling and trying to put into words what we learned and how we're trying to better ourselves and catch up with you guys again.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for listening to the Struggling Hunters. We'll talk to you next week at episode 12. Can't believe we're there already, man.
For sure.
Crazy. That's like 3 months of podcasting.
Right.
It's crazy. All right, guys. Have a good one. We'll talk to you later.
Adios.